Ladies and gentlemen, look around you. The world is constantly shifting. Storms rise without warning. People come and go. Plans fail. Expectations collapse. You try to hold everything together, grip tightly to outcomes, cling to control like it's the only thing keeping you afloat. But the truth is much more liberating. You're not in control. And that's your superpower. Yes, that sounds like a contradiction. We've been taught that power lies in control. Control your career, your image, your relationships, your future. But how often does life follow our script? How often do things go exactly as planned? Almost never, because life is not obedient to your will. No amount of effort can command the weather or stop time or change other people's thoughts. And the more you resist this truth, the more you suffer. Here's the philosophical turning point. True strength lies not in controlling the external, but in governing the internal. Your reactions, your judgments, your choices, that is your domain. That is where your power begins. Think of the art. They train their aim, perfect their posture, steady their breath. But once the arrow leaves the bow, the wind may blow, the target may shift, the outcome is no longer in their hands, should they despair. No, their success lies in the effort, in the precision of what was within their control, not in the final hit or miss. You are the archer in your own life. You aim by choosing how to show up, how to speak, how to respond. But you must release the illusion that you can control how others receive you, how events unfold, or when fortune decides to turn its back. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. And yet, here's the paradox. When you embrace what you cannot control, you gain control over what truly matters. You stop wasting energy on worry. You stop arguing with reality. You become calm in chaos, focused in confusion, and fearless in uncertainty. You walk into the storm with clarity, because you know that while the winds may rage, your mind is your... So when someone wrongs you, you don't control their actions, but you control your response. When the job slips away, you don't control the market, but you control your will to keep moving. When illness strikes, you don't control the body, but you control the dignity with which you face the pain. That's power, that's resilience, that's freedom. The ego cries out for control, but the wise learn to surrender, not in weakness but in strength, to surrender to what is and command only what is theirs. The fortress of the mind, the discipline of the soul, the integrity of choice. You become unshakable not because the world is steady, but because you are. You're not in control, and that's your superpower. Because you no longer need to be, you choose peace over panic, courage over fear, effort over outcome. You stop trying to steer the river and instead learn to navigate it. You realize that even though you can't control the wind, you can always adjust your sails. And when you live this way, you become dangerous because the world no longer owns you. Let the storm come. You don't need to control it. You only need to remain still within it. That's how mountains are formed. That's how heroes are born. That's how wisdom is lived. We spend much of our lives grasping for control, trying to arrange people, circumstances, and outcomes to fit the image we've constructed in our minds. We build plans, set goals, make assumptions, and cling to expectations with the hope that things will unfold exactly the way we imagine. But life, with all its unpredictability, has a way of reminding us that the world doesn't bend to our will. Flights get delayed, relationships break, opportunities vanish, people betray, health declines, and economies collapse. It's easy to feel defeated when these things happen, to believe that somehow we failed because the result didn't match the plan. But what if the failure isn't in the outcome, but in the belief that we could ever control the outcome in the first place? The core of our suffering often lies in this illusion of control. We imagine we are captains of every ship, but the sea has always belonged to the storm. When we treat the external world as something we can fully command, we trap ourselves in a cycle of disappointment. The Stoics understood this well. They taught that external events are subject to fate, fortune, randomness, not to our design. No matter how well we prepare, there is always an element of chance. The wise person doesn't deny this. They accept it fully. They understand that to try to control what is uncontrollable is not only futile, it's a guaranteed path to distress. We often mistake influence for control. Yes, you can prepare for an exam, but you can't control the questions. You can nurture a relationship, but you can't control the other person's emotions. You can work hard at your job, but you can't control whether your company stays afloat. There's a thin but important line between doing your best and believing your best will guarantee a specific outcome. The first is empowering. The second is dangerous. When we equate effort with entitlement to results, we set ourselves up for resentment when life doesn't comply. Control implies certainty, but the external world is anything but certain. No matter how tightly you hold on, the world slips through your fingers like water. And yet, acknowledging this truth can feel terrifying at first. We crave certainty because it offers a false sense of security. Control, or the illusion of it, comforts the anxious mind. But that comfort is fragile, easily shattered by reality. The moment something unexpected happens, our false sense of control dissolves, and with it, our peace. In trying to make the world bend to our desires, we become rigid and reactive. But when we let go of this illusion, we open the door to a deeper kind of power, one rooted not in domination of the external, but in acceptance and adaptability. The need for control often stems from fear. Fear of discomfort, fear of loss, fear of failure. We try to micromanage life as a defense mechanism, believing that if we can just control enough variables, we can avoid pain. But pain, like joy, is a part of life's fabric. No amount of planning can insulate us completely from it. Ironically, the more we resist this, the more we suffer. The tighter we grip, the more we hurt when things don't go as planned. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing to focus your energy where it actually matters, rather than exhausting yourself in a futile battle against what's beyond your reach. This illusion of control also fuels conflict with others. When we try to control people, their behavior, their choices, their pace of growth, we often damage relationships. No one likes to be controlled, just as we don't. Respecting the autonomy of others and the uncontrollable nature of their thoughts and actions brings peace. It teaches us to respond with understanding rather than resistance, compassion rather than coercion. While much of the world lies outside your influence, the realm within you remains entirely your own. In that inner space, your thoughts, values, perceptions, choices, resides a kind of power that no one and nothing can take from you. This is where true strength begins. When you recognize that the external world is unstable and unpredictable, but your inner world can be shaped, refined, and governed, you begin to shift your attention from what is fleeting to what is enduring. This is not about escape or denial of reality, but rather about anchoring yourself in the one thing you can truly command, your own mind. Your thoughts are yours. Your perspective is yours. Even when others try to manipulate you, insult you, or provoke you, your interpretation and reaction remain within your control. Someone can call you a failure, but unless you accept that label and allow it to take root in your mind, it holds no real power. The external action may be offensive, even harmful, but the meaning it carries is assigned by you. This is where your responsibility lies, not in the words or actions of others, but in your response to them. The same applies to praise. Just as you must be wary of letting insults control your mind, you must also be cautious of letting compliments govern your self-worth. No one else can govern your attitude unless you give them permission. You may not control whether a storm comes, but you control whether you panic or stay calm. You may not control whether you are misunderstood, but you control whether you remain grounded in your integrity. When you understand that you are the guardian of your internal state, a quiet confidence begins to take shape. This inner fortress, once built, makes you far less vulnerable to the chaos of the outside world. You begin to live not reactively, but intentionally. This internal power also allows you to set your own values rather than adopting the shifting standards of society. The world may celebrate fame, wealth, status, or appearance, but you are free to prioritize wisdom, kindness, courage, and humility. You don't have to be carried along by the current of popular opinion. When you stand firmly in your own principles, the noise of the world becomes background rather than instruction. You become the author of your own story, rather than a character written by someone else. This control over the self is not about perfection, it's about presence and choice. You won't always get it right. There will be moments of anger, fear, temptation, and weakness. But even in those moments, you have the ability to pause, to reflect, to choose again. This awareness is itself a form of power, to be able to observe your thoughts rather than be consumed by them. To say, I am feeling anger instead of I am angry, creates a space where freedom exists. That space is where your agency lives, and in it you decide what kind of person you are becoming. People often chase control over others as a substitute for the harder task of mastering themselves. It is easier to try and change the world than to change one's habits, beliefs, or assumptions. But those who take the inward path find a depth of strength that no external control could ever provide. They are not swayed by flattery or shaken by adversity. They do not need to dominate others to feel powerful, because their sense of power is rooted in something unshakable. By developing this internal mastery, you begin to navigate life with a sense of clarity and intention. You stop being a prisoner to circumstance and start becoming an architect of your character. You realize that freedom is not the absence of constraints, but the presence of discipline. That dignity comes not from having control over life, but from living life on your terms, regardless of its unpredictability. Most people are taught from an early age to measure success by outcome. If the result is favorable, then the effort is considered worthwhile. If not, it's seen as a failure. This mindset creates a subtle trap. It conditions people to seek validation in what happens after they act, rather than in how they act. But when you begin to shift your focus away from the result and toward the quality of your intention and effort, you begin to experience a different kind of freedom. This is the wisdom of detachment from outcomes, and it changes everything. It allows you to participate fully in life without being held hostage by its uncertainties. When your sense of worth or peace is tied to a specific outcome, you become dependent on variables you can't fully control. You can study relentlessly, but you cannot guarantee the top grade. You can give your heart to a relationship, but you cannot ensure the other person's loyalty. You can pour yourself into your work, but you cannot force recognition or reward. When everything rides on how things turn out, you're always at risk of disappointment. But if you can train yourself to judge success by your effort, by your commitment, integrity, and consistency, then you step into a place of stability. You begin to act from a position of inner strength rather than external validation. This does not mean you don't care about results or abandon ambition. It means you value the process more than the prize. You aim high, work hard, and strive for excellence, but you no longer crumble when the outcome falls short, because you know that the worth of your action lies in your sincerity and discipline, not in whether the world recognizes or rewards it. You become less anxious because you've released your grasp on what's beyond you. You understand that trying your best is enough, regardless of whether your best leads to what you hoped for. Letting go of the outcome also allows you to be more present. When you're obsessed with where your effort will lead, you often miss the moment you're in. You're so fixated on what might happen tomorrow that you overlook the depth and value of what you're doing today. But when you act with focus and purpose, unattached to the result, your work becomes a form of presence. You find meaning in the doing, not just the getting. And this shift brings peace because you are no longer racing towards some future point for fulfillment. You are living it in each step, each breath, each choice. Another gift of detachment is resilience. When things don't go your way, and they often won't, you bounce back faster. You don't interpret failure as a sign that you're not good enough or that your effort was wasted. You see it as part of the path. Because your identity is not built on the outcome, it remains intact through both victory and defeat. You're not fragile. You're grounded in effort, not in applause. You are measured by your commitment, not by the scoreboard. This makes you dangerous to fear because fear feeds on your attachment to results. But when you let go, fear loses its leverage. This kind of detachment also makes your actions more ethical. You're no longer tempted to cut corners, manipulate outcomes, or betray your values just to get a result. When the process is what matters most, you stay aligned with what's right, not just with what's effective. You stop chasing shortcuts and start building strength. You cultivate patience because you're not rushing to reach a finish line. You're walking your path with integrity. And that integrity becomes a source of quiet confidence because it tells you that no matter what happens, you have remained true to yourself. Surrender is one of the most misunderstood concepts in human experience. To many, it sounds like weakness, passivity, or giving up. But in truth, surrender, when rightly understood, is an expression of deep strength, clarity, and wisdom. It's not about bowing to defeat, but about recognizing the boundary between what can be changed and what must be accepted. The illusion of control seduces us into believing that if we just try harder, fight longer, push more forcefully, we can bend reality to our will. And yet reality doesn't ask for our approval. It moves forward with its own rhythm, unconcerned with our preferences. The wise person does not exhaust themselves in a struggle against what is, but instead surrenders to truth, and in doing so, finds peace and resilience. To surrender is to stop fighting the current of life, and instead learn how to navigate with it. It means you stop reacting to every difficulty with resistance and start approaching life's challenges with composure and clarity. This does not mean becoming indifferent or apathetic. It means facing life as it is, not as you wish it to be, while remaining grounded in your values. It's the courage to let go of outcomes while still showing up with full effort. It's the discipline to stop micromanaging life's uncertainties and instead respond with wisdom and presence. When you surrender to what you cannot control, your energy shifts inward. Rather than wasting mental and emotional resources on trying to change the uncontrollable, you redirect your attention to the one thing that always remains within your command: your attitude, your choices, your response. This shift is liberating. It allows you to face even the most turbulent situations without becoming internally disoriented. You no longer place your peace in the hands of chance. You carry it within you because you have accepted the truth that control over the outer world is limited, but control over the self is limitless when practiced with discipline. This mindset transforms how you experience adversity. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What can I learn from this? What is this moment asking of me?" You don't need to force life to go your way because you've trained yourself to adapt, to respond, and to grow. Surrender allows you to drop the exhausting need to predict and control everything. In that release, a quiet power rises. You stop needing to be right all the time. You stop needing every plan to unfold perfectly. You stop needing others to behave according to your expectations. And with that, your frustration diminishes, your anxiety loosens, and your mind becomes more still. This strength through surrender also brings humility. You no longer demand that life obey your timeline or your desires. You recognize the vastness of what lies beyond your understanding and trust that some things are unfolding in ways that may not be visible to you yet. You let go of the need for instant answers and rest in the patience of steady action. You stop being a prisoner to your impulses and start becoming an observer of your mind. In that stillness, you gain clarity. In that clarity, you make better decisions. And in those decisions, you build a life not ruled by chaos, but guided by inner stability. True surrender is not about being passive. It is about becoming profoundly active in the right direction. Instead of reacting blindly to every twist of fate, you move with purpose, knowing what is yours to carry and what is not. You focus your strength where it matters, rather than scattering it in a futile effort to dominate the uncontrollable. When you surrender in this way, you are no longer at war with life. You become an ally of reality, a student of circumstance, and a master of your own heart. Emotional mastery is one of the most essential and difficult disciplines a person can cultivate. While many people focus their energy on managing external circumstances, the real battleground lies within. Every day, we are confronted with situations that provoke us: anger, fear, disappointment, jealousy, sadness, anxiety. These emotions are not inherently wrong. They are part of being human. But allowing them to control your thoughts, words, and actions without reflection leads to suffering, regret, and imbalance. The Stoic path calls for something higher, not the suppression of emotion, but the governance of it. To feel emotion, recognize it, and then choose your response. That is emotional mastery. When you master your emotions, you are no longer a puppet of circumstance. You stop being reactive and start being reflective. You don't lash out when someone insults. You don't spiral when things don't go your way. You don't crumble under pressure or allow fear to dictate your decisions. Instead, you become calm, measured, and anchored. This doesn't mean you don't feel pain or disappointment. It means you don't let those emotions rule over you. You observe them, sit with them, understand them, and then move through them with discipline. This mastery begins with awareness. Many people are so entangled in their emotions that they don't even realize they're being controlled by them. They identify so strongly with their anger or sadness that they believe it defines them. But there's a gap between stimulus and response, a space where choice lives. Emotional mastery is about expanding that space. It's about learning to pause before reacting. When something triggers you, The immediate emotional impulse might scream for a reaction. But if you have trained your mind, you can slow down, breathe, and ask yourself, what is the wisest response? What outcome do I actually want from this moment? Developing this habit takes time. It requires patience and practice. You have to learn to watch your emotional waves rise and fall without getting swept away by them. It's like standing on the shore and observing the tide. You feel its pull, but you don't have to dive in. Meditation, journaling, and self-inquiry become tools for sharpening this awareness. Over time, you start to notice patterns. You begin to see which triggers consistently provoke certain reactions, and you train yourself to respond with intention rather than instinct. Emotional mastery also involves humility. It means recognizing that you are not perfect, that you will make mistakes, and that you are still learning. There will be times when your anger gets the best of you, when your anxiety clouds your judgment, or when your sadness overwhelms your motivation. The key is not to eliminate these moments entirely, but to reduce their frequency and impact. And when they happen, you don't punish yourself. You reflect, you learn, and you recommit to your practice. A person who has mastered their emotions walks through life with a quiet kind of power. They are not easily disturbed, not because life is easy, but because they have trained themselves to respond wisely. They don't waste energy on things they cannot control, and they don't allow the moods of others to dictate their state of mind. They are not numb or robotic. They are grounded, thoughtful, and emotionally intelligent. They can offer comfort to others without being consumed by their pain. They can stay strong in crisis, calm in conflict, and clear in chaos. This inner stability becomes a form of leadership. People are drawn to those who remain composed under pressure, who do not escalate tension but de-escalate it. Emotional mastery builds trust because it signals that you are dependable, thoughtful, and self-aware. It's not about bottling emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about learning how to carry them well. When your emotions serve you rather than sabotage you, you become a force of strength in a world that often feels chaotic and reactive. Unshakable peace is not found in a life free of problems, conflict, or uncertainty. It is found in the quiet realization that you do not need to control everything in order to be at peace. When you give up the exhausting pursuit of managing every detail, influencing every person, and ensuring every outcome goes your way, you uncover a different kind of strength. It is not the strength of force or domination, but the strength of stillness, acceptance, and clarity. This kind of peace is not granted by the external world, but cultivated within. It comes not from things going right, but from knowing that you will be right with yourself regardless of how things go. This inner peace becomes your superpower because it grants you freedom from being tossed around by the chaos of life. When you are no longer dependent on circumstances for your emotional state, you become unshakable. People can misunderstand you, plans can collapse, storms can come, but you remain centered because you have stopped tying your well-being to things outside of you. You've learned that the opinions of others, the fluctuations of fortune, and the conditions of the world are not the source of your calm. They are merely noise. You do not silence the noise by trying to control it. You silence it by no longer needing it to be quiet in order for you to be still. This does not mean you become indifferent to life or numb to experience. On the contrary, it means you are able to engage fully with life without being consumed by it. You feel pain without being destroyed by it. You experience joy without clinging to it. You accept loss without being broken. You remain active in the world, making decisions, taking action, and engaging with others, but you do it from a foundation of internal stability rather than reactive emotion. Your peace does not come from everything being in place. It comes from knowing how to stay in place no matter where everything else moves. Unshakable peace also brings with it a clarity of thought that is rare in a distracted world. When you are not constantly reacting to events, you are able to think clearly, act deliberately, and speak wisely. You do not rush to judgment or fall into emotional extremes. You carry a quiet presence that others feel even before you speak. Your stability becomes a refuge for those around you, not because you try to control them, but because your example reminds them that peace is possible even in disorder. You become proof that stillness is strength, and that serenity is not something passive but deeply active and intentional. The world constantly changes. People will come and go. Wealth will rise and fall. Health will fluctuate. Reputations will shift, trends will pass, but the one constant you can cultivate is the quality of your own presence. How you hold yourself, how you relate to challenge, how you respond to uncertainty. This presence becomes your anchor. You no longer live at the mercy of the external because you have claimed authority over your internal. You don't resist life's movement. You move with it, not in fear but with trust in your capacity to meet whatever comes with grace. And because of this peace, you become less afraid. Fear loses its grip when you realize that even in the worst-case scenario, your strength remains intact. You are not fearless because there is no threat. You are fearless because your identity, your integrity, and your mindset are not threatened by what happens. You understand that you do not need to conquer the world in order to stand strong within it. You simply need to return to yourself again and again, no matter what life brings, and choose calm over chaos, wisdom over reaction, and presence over panic. So when the world shakes, you don't have to. When plans unravel, you remain whole. When others lose themselves in the chaos, you return to your center, because you understand now true power was never about control. It was always about clarity, acceptance, and the strength to let go. You're not in control, and that's your superpower.